What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Engage 8 pod. I believe this is episode number 13. Today, we're going to be recapping some Monday Night Football, going over some college football from the past weekend, and previewing week five. Josh, you want to get us started?
Yep, starting us off with Monday Night Football. The Seahawks beat the Giants 24-3, and it is full panic time if you're a Giants fan. Daniel Jones gets sacked 10 times. This O-line that it seems like they've been using high draft capital for years now, just continues to get injured or not perform to the ability that they drafted them at, and it's giving Daniel Jones no chance. Not to completely say that Daniel Jones is free of any blame, but it's hard to play good in any game when you get sacked 10 times.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're missing your best player in Saquon Barkley and you don't know when he's going to come back, it's hard to find the light at the end of the tunnel. It's Daniel Jones. He hasn't been great, like you said, and he is the least of their worries right now, which is truly saying something. The O line, they don't look like an NFL O line. They look like JV going against a varsity defense. It's not pretty at all. Matt Breida was their second leading rusher, and Daniel Jones was doing his best Justin Fields impression, just scrambling for his life when the pocket collapses on what seemed like every single snap. And he was also their leading receiver with 5 catches for 48 yards. But I do want to talk about Devon Witherspoon. I think he had 7 tackles, 2 sacks, and a pick that was returned for a touchdown. He just immediately inserted his name into the Defensive Rookie of the Year race, in my opinion.
Definitely submitted his name. 98-yard pick six. Speaking on that offensive line from the Giants, just an abysmal game. I don't know if you guys saw the video of Evan Neal started blocking Darren Waller, pushed him out of the play, and led to a free rusher, and Daniel Jones ended up throwing interception on that play. So it's been brutal so far for Evan Neal. Their offense just has nothing going. They need Saquon back as soon as possible. They had the big play with Hyatt a couple weeks ago against the Cardinals, and since I think he has 1 total target, so you use some high draft capital on a guy, and then you just don't use him. And then on the Seahawks side of the ball, Geno Smith had a solid game. He got banged up late in the second quarter. He was able to come back. He was pissed off all game. He had all right, but the defense just was able to dominate the weak Giants offense.
Yeah, bit of a bounce back week for Kayvon Thibodeau. Gets 2 sacks, even though he was having a pretty miserable start to the season. Devin Witherspoon, though, switched, was an outside corner, had to play nickel today because they had some injuries. Kobe Bryant was hurt, and then they also lost Jamal Adams early in the game. So he had to play nickel, and he played fantastic. So any player that you can have in your secondary that can play multiple positions, whether it's safety and nickel or inside and outside corner, that's just huge for your team. So he's definitely in that defensive rookie of the year race. But yeah, like I said, I think it's full panic mode. If you're the Giants, they go and they play the Bills and the Dolphins the next 2 weeks, which are, I think you can probably chalk those up to 2 L's. Not the best pass rushes on those teams, but you don't have to have a good pass rush. Like the Seahawks don't have a good pass rush, and they sacked Daniel Jones 10 times last night. So I would be worried if I was a Giants fan. You might as well chalk in 1-5 and then move on from there.
Yeah, you definitely should. But kind of moving over to the Seahawks, I'll probably take your point, Mike. But Kenneth Walker had a great game, 17 carries for 79 yards and a touchdown, 4.6 yards a carry. Ever since I called him out for having a not so great game, he's got, I think, 2 or 3 straight phenomenal games behind a very shuffled offensive line with all the injuries they have. So I've been very impressed with that for sure.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker's he's just that guy. He's becoming a top 10 running back in the NFL if he's not already. Their offense looked all right. Like you said, Josh Kayvon Thibodeau had a good game, but the Seahawks, it wasn't really close. The Giants had a chance, but the pick six really was a nail in the coffin.
Yep, and that's all I got from this Monday Night Football game. Any last points from you guys before we move on to college football?
No, well, one last thing. I mean, Seahawks, their one kind of rough loss against the Rams from being 4-0, and
Yep,
they've been pretty solid in all their games too, aside from that game. So
absolutely. And if they could be easily sitting at 5-0 right now. That Lions game, they also could have lost, but the other games they've looked solid, played down to their opponents in the past, and not this week. So good for them. But I guess we can kick it to Mike for college football now.
Yeah, a couple big college football games this weekend. one big game from Friday night. We had been talking about how Utah has been looking great without Cam Rising. They go and play Oregon State, transfer quarterback DJ, and they offense just couldn't get it going. No Cam Rising. They didn't find a groove, and Oregon State upset Utah 21-7.
Yeah, this was one where Utah's offense has been pretty solid. This is now 2 weeks in a row though where the offense has not played well. Against UCLA, that worked out because their defense played outstanding. Their defense didn't play bad against Oregon State, but if you can only score single digits, it's going to be tough to win in the Pac-12. So tough for Utah, and they got to get healthy.
They do, and the next game, I know we got a couple Kentucky fans in here. Kentucky playing Florida at home in Lexington, and they dominated Florida.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal game. Kentucky for a long time could not beat Florida, and over the past 3-4 years, they have been able to do that at a high rate. Devin Leary has been a big concern amongst Kentucky fans. He does not have to throw the ball more than 20 times this game. He only throws the ball 19 times, that's for 69 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 picks. But Ray Davis, 26 carries, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just a stellar running back performance and just absolutely carried the Wildcats on Saturday. And now for the 2 years ago, 2021, Kentucky and Georgia were both undefeated going into Athens. And next week we get a 5-0 Kentucky team versus a 5-0 Georgia team in Athens, and that should be a fun one.
Yeah, you don't see many games where you go and dominate a team with only 69 passing yards, but Kentucky, they got it done. And speaking of Georgia, they struggled this week with Auburn and Peyton Thorne playing quarterback. Georgia, they didn't really just look dominant like they normally do. They got a late Brock Bowers touchdown to win the game. He's just an elite tight end, but not really what you wanted to see if you're a Georgia fan.
Yeah, Georgia's been kind of underwhelming in some of their games. I don't think that that's any concern. We know that going into the season, their schedule had a lot of criticism of people saying they're not going to play anyone. But yeah, at the end of the day, they're 5-0, and not a lot of teams can say they're 5-0. And with their not very strong schedule, they will 1,000% be in the SEC championship, despite however they play against most of these teams.
Yeah, and their defense, they did play well. Peyton Thorne only had 82 passing yards. He did have 90 yards rushing, but he'll do that. Another SEC game, Ole Miss versus LSU. Very entertaining game on both sides of the football. 55-49 was the final score. Both offenses were electric. Jaden Daniels, 414 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Jackson Dart for Ole Miss, 389 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Was an incredible game. Just electric.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Dart, first of all-time quarterback name. You can't really ask for a better quarterback name than Jackson Dart. Him and Daniels were phenomenal. And Ole Miss, how often do you see a game where your quarterback passes for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and your running back gets 33 carries? So that was pretty wild. And what a big, big win for Ole Miss. For a while, they were saying Kiffin couldn't get the big one. He struggled to beat Bama every season he's played them. And now he goes and gets a monster win over LSU. And the SEC is just the SEC. They're going to always cannibalize each other.
Yeah, and they rushed the field after the game. The ESPN game of the week, college game day, Notre Dame versus Duke. Notre Dame didn't play great all game. Duke is a great team. Audric Estime got a touchdown late. I think it was a 30-yard rushing touchdown to win him the game. I keep seeing Sam Hartman for Heisman. I don't really see him getting the stats to really deserve that, but he had a solid game, 222 passing yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Audric Estime was great on the ground, 81 carries, 2 touchdowns. Riley Leonard, Duke's quarterback, had a phenomenal game, kind of all around. 134 passing yards. He did have a touchdown and a pick, but 88 yards on the ground, put his body on the line. He did get hurt late. I don't know what his status really is, but he might be out a week or two.
Yeah, Leonard, dual threat, 18 carries is huge for them. about the Hartman Heisman thing, he played really, really well the first 3, 4 games of the season. And that is when he really, I feel like, inserted himself in that. And he had 2 big opportunities this week against Duke and last week against Ohio State to go out there and prove that he's a Heisman quarterback. And he failed to do that in both games. So I think the tide switches back to the Caleb Williams side once again. And the Heisman is I when Caleb Williams wins this Heisman, people are going to talk about it then, but no one's talking about the fact that it is so hard to win back-to-back Heismans. No one wins back-to-back Heismans. So I hope Caleb Williams gets the respect he deserves when he does win both Heismans in his final 2 years of college. And then Estime, I just love Estime. He's so fun to watch, man. He's so fun to watch. I think he's going to translate well into the NFL as well.
I agree. I love Audric Estime. And speaking of Caleb Williams, the big game, Fox game of the week, Colorado USC in Boulder. Caleb Williams goes out against, it is a weaker Colorado defense, 400 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 pick for Caleb Williams. Just so good. And then Shadur Sanders on the other side also had a great game, 370 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a pick. And a lot of people had written off Colorado early in this game, but they went down the first half, a lot of self-inflicted wounds. And in the second half, they came back and they really made it a game. They had a chance for an onside kick to get the ball back and possibly tie it. They didn't recover it, but they just need to get that defense straightened away. The offense seems to be fine.
Yep, and I think you can say the same thing about both of these teams. To be honest, USC is going to get to a point. Is next week Notre Dame for USC?
I think it might be.
That game is going to be phenomenal. That I think I want to say that matchup favors Notre Dame. Maybe I don't know. That's a tough one though. USC is just, as a lot of the good Pac-12 or Pac-12 teams, they need to get their defense figured out because you have everything you need with Caleb Williams.
They got Arizona next week, and then Notre Dame the following week.
Okay, so 2 weeks from now. So yeah, I'm very excited. I got that game circled for sure. I'm very excited to watch that game. But shout out Colorado. Anytime you could be down 27 points and come back and put yourself in the game is huge. They covered the spread, which they couldn't do last week against Oregon. So good for Deion. I think this is a moral win for them.
Yeah, I agree. It's big for Deion. They just, like I said, they need to get that defense straightened away. And that game against Notre Dame for USC is going to be huge. I'm looking at Notre Dame's schedule. They have Louisville next week. That's another big chance for Sam Hartman to have a chance. Louisville's been great so far this year. They're 5-0. Next week should be another great week of college football, but I think we're ready to preview week 5.
Yeah, Notre Dame's just in the ACC without being in the ACC. They play like every ACC team. But yeah, I agree. We are. And you got anything, Zach, before we move on here to your Bears?
Kind of just delaying the inevitable. Do we know when Travis Hunter's coming back? Because he was the most electric player in college football, aside from Caleb Williams and even Hartman in the first couple weeks.
I remember saying that, or the biggest thing that he was missing the USC game. So I'd assume this week or next week.
I know that he said, like, in an interview or like something like that, that he wasn't going to be held out of that USC game, but then he ended up getting, like, he just didn't play. So
yeah, I don't think he was ever going to play in that game. I think that was just him yapping.
October 28th against UCLA is most likely.
Damn, that's still a long time, but
they have a bye week in between, so
that would explain it then. But all right, Zach, would you like to get us started then with Thursday Night Football, Bears and Commanders?
Yeah, I definitely can. We got Bears and Commanders Thursday Night Football in Washington. Washington coming off a honestly solid loss to the reigning NFC champs and division rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles, in overtime. And the Bears coming off a brutal 21-point choke lead against Denver Broncos at home. Last week, we saw Justin Fields really emerge as a really good passer, but we got to see more consistency with that going forward. And Washington, like I said before, they hung with the champs. It was really impressive, and I bet you a lot of people didn't give them a chance going into that game, but we talked about that a little bit already. But for the Bears, they're going up against a really tough test. They got this incredible Washington front, and their O-line has been they probably got a different shuffle every single week, if I am remembering correctly. But according to injury report, Tevin Jenkins has been participating fully the last 2 days of practice, which I know it's a short week. They've been mainly walkthroughs, but it's been projected that he would have fully practiced. So they could be getting some really, really important O-line reinforcements there. But even if he does come back, Washington's front, they're so good. and it's going to be really hard for them to just stop Deron Payne. I think it's Jonathan Allen, Chase Young, Montez Sweat. Like this, they're insane. And on the other side, Bears are still missing Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson, and they got to go against, Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, which is a really good duo. And you were talking about it last week, Mike. Jahan Dotson, he hasn't been getting a lot of looks this year, and this is definitely a week for Sam Howell to really get back on the right track, and Terry and Jahan to both get a ton of targets, a ton of production, and really put their foot on the Chicago Bears secondary.
Yeah, Sam Howell got back on track last week against an Eagles defense that has been struggling in the secondary. I'll touch on that a little bit more later, but he still played really well against a Eagles team with a very good front as well. I think this is just another tough matchup for the Bears. It's hard. It doesn't get much better. Yeah, fair. Yeah, but it doesn't get much better than the Washington front. I think the Bears O-line absolutely has to block to win this game, and I just don't really see that happening. Fields is coming off a really good game against a horrible defense in Denver, and he kind of has to face the opposite this week. He's going to be in trouble all game long, and I just don't really see a way the Bears win this game on the road.
I'm not ruling the Bears out in this game. I think they have a chance to win, but the Commanders' defense is very solid, and the Bears' offense is going to have to play like they did in the first half last week. But the Bears' defense clearly has been struggling this year, and we saw what the Commanders were able to do to a pretty solid Eagles defense. So Sam Howell has a chance to have another great week, follow what he did last week. And the Bears if they're going to want to win. I think they're going to have to force Sam Howell into a turnover or two and get the ball back short field and get some field goals and short yardage touchdowns.
Yeah, for sure. But one thing I am looking at is last week, Washington really struggled with containing A.J. Brown. He had 9 catches for over 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, including one, I believe, late in the fourth quarter to just establish dominance, honestly. So if Chicago wants to stay in this game, like you said, Mike, they gotta really show up like they did last week in the first half offensively, and they gotta feed DJ Moore. DJ Moore, he absolutely cooked Pat Surtain in man coverage last week, and I think there's really no one else on the Washington defense who can come close to Pat Surtain's talent. So if they want to have a chance to stay in the game and give their defense like time on the sidelines, they got to feed DJ Moore early and often for sure. But I don't think it'll be enough. I got Washington in this one strictly because Chicago doesn't have the coaching and they don't have the pass rush. They haven't shown anything to me that they can really win a game yet. So until they actually win one, I just have no business really picking Chicago.
Yep, the Commanders' only losses, I want to point out, they're sitting at 2-2. Their only losses are the Bills and the Eagles. The Bills game was a blowout, of course, but the Eagles game was an overtime loss. I think the Commanders are a pretty sneaky good team. They're without a doubt the third best team in that division. The Giants are horrible. And yeah, I really like the Commanders. I like Ron Rivera over Eberflus. I like Howell over Fields. I like the Commanders' defense over the Bears' defense. So overall, I'm going to go with Washington.
If the Bears want to have a chance in this game, I think they're going to have to get Roschon Johnson the ball more, and they're going to have to keep continuing to feed Cole Kmet, especially in the red zone. But it's a primetime game in Washington. I think with the new ownership, that stadium's going to be bumping. I got the Commanders as well.
All right. Anything else before we move on here then?
No, not really.
All right, cool. Next game, Jags at Bills in London. I guess this is technically a home game for the Bills. I don't know why, but I guess it is. The Jags offense has not been playing well as of late, just this whole season, really. And their defense has been so-so. Maybe their defense has been really overperforming between the two. But I expect the Jags offensive struggles to continue. The Bills defense is playing fantastic so far this season. We talked about it. We've been talking about it every week. They've been playing great. Held the Dolphins to 20 points last week, a team that scored 70 the week before. I think the Jags got to get their win against the Falcons last week in London. I think this is going to be a true test for them, but we have to take into account that the Jags will have been in London all week. So that is a monster advantage. The time change is real. Going overseas is real. So I think that's going to give them a big advantage. I don't know if that's going to be enough to get them the win, though.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up. The time change is, you ask any NFL player who had to go from the U.S. to London for a game, they get jet lagged. It's not just a fake myth thing. It's real, and it really does affect these players. Like you said, Jags, they're already there in Buffalo. Honestly, we said it last week. The Dolphins really just ran into a buzzsaw of a team, and Bills are still riding high. So I don't really think there's much the Jags can do right now, especially defensively, to stop Josh Allen in this high-powered offense. But they do kind of catch a slight break on the offensive end because the Bills are going to be without Trey White for probably the rest of the year with that Achilles injury. So Ridley and Kirk will have to get themselves going early and often with Trevor Lawrence, and they got to hope ETN kind of just does okay so they can keep a balanced attack going. But it's a tough matchup for Jacksonville for sure, even with the rest advantage.
Definitely. The Bills have been on a tear this year since the loss to the Jets. The last 3 games they've won by 28, 34, and 28. So they've been averaging a 30-point victory in their last 3 games. And something to note, the defense played good in week 1 too, but Sean McDermott is calling plays for this defense now, not Leslie Frazier. He's on a break from the team. And so far, this defense, it's just been, you can't get anything going against this defense. And you said it, Josh, this Jags offense has been struggling. They're going to have to find something in this game, whether it's Calvin Ridley, get Christian Kirk going, ETN, I don't know, but they're going to have to get something going. They, like you guys both said, they have the advantage in traveling. They're still playing in a different stadium. This week, they're playing in Tottenham Stadium. This week, they played in Wembley last week, but those are very close to each other. So the only advantage I see the Jags having is the London trip.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's their only advantage in this one. They have been struggling, and I'm trying to just recall real quick off the top of my head. They played the Chiefs defense has been pretty good. The Falcons defense has been pretty good. They didn't play well against the Texans, but the Texans defense has been pretty good. And who did they play week 1?
The Colts.
Colts. And then the Colts defense has been playing pretty good. So they haven't really had a chance to play a bad defense, really. You can call the Texans a bad defense, but they've been playing well as of late.
They're just well coached.
They are. Yeah, they definitely are. So I'm worried about the Jags for sure. I expect the offensive struggles to continue, and Josh Allen just has to continue his limited turnover stretch. And if he does that, the Bills are going to win a lot of games. I got the Bills winning in London over the Jags.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I got Buffalo over Jacksonville. Josh Allen, he's just been on fire lately. He's been smart with the ball, and he's been very accurate, actually. So I don't see Jacksonville keeping up with this high-powered offense. So I got Buffalo.
Yeah, the Jags pass defense, they've been struggling this year against the pass, so I think Josh Allen is going to set up for another big day. But the Jags do have a chance to really show that they could be a team to be a threat in the AFC this year. I just don't think that's going to be done. The Bills are the hottest team, and I don't think the advantage in traveling is going to have an effect on the game. I think the Bills win.
All right, moving on to Panthers at Lions. This Lions team has just been playing really, really good. They look like one of the best teams in the league so far. And they've been doing it on both ends. Last year it was just offense, and the offense was just trying to overcome the defensive struggles. This year that has not been the case. The offense has maybe even underperformed compared to last season overall. So I hope to see the Lions offense kind of get back to they played well last week, but really get back to their ways. And they're playing a pretty bad defense this week and beat up in the Panthers. The Lions' run defense has been top of the league. They are first in rushing yards given up, 243. And that is the fewest for the Lions since World War II. So that is it's great to see.
A stat.
Yeah, I know. It's wild. So that's you love to see that for the Lions, a team that has struggled defending the run for the better part of a decade now. And then 2 big new additions for the Lions this week. Jamison Williams coming off of his big suspension. I don't even want to say big, just suspension. And Emmanuel Mosley coming off of his injury from last season. Both will return this week. Both will be limited in their individual aspects. But like I've said on here the past couple episodes, I think Emmanuel Mosley in particular is going to be huge for this Lions defense. Just adding your cornerback to, and then on offense, adding Jamison Williams, your wide receiver to a team that's already 3-1 and already playing well is going to be huge for this team.
Yeah, the Lions, they're a good team. Carolina, they're 0-4. This one isn't really too hard to figure out. Detroit, they're playing really well, and they're getting a couple really good players back. So there's not really much for me to say about this one. If the Lions are going to run the ball, this is definitely a game to do it. If they're going to throw the ball, this is definitely a game to do it. If they're going to get stops on defense, this is the game to do it. It's against a rookie quarterback, and as of now, due to a recent like potential trade talks with the Panthers looking for a receiver, they're facing a receiving group that isn't that great. So I don't have much to say about this one. I got Detroit.
Yeah, you touched on it, Josh. Their run defense has been great, and the Panthers' pass offense hasn't been great. So I think Bryce Young is going to have a hard day finding receivers open, and I think Aiden Hutchinson is going to have a feast against this Panthers offensive line that has also looked abysmal. You could say maybe it's a trap game just because the Panthers are 0-4, but I don't think that's going to affect Dan Campbell and the Lions. Panthers have been putting a lot of pressure on Frank Reich already. He's going to have a big game if the Panthers want a chance to win, but I think the Lions are just a better team, and I don't think it'll be close.
Yep, I will note that when the Lions were going on their tear in the back half of last season, maybe or not maybe, the biggest game of the biggest reason they didn't make the playoffs last year is losing at Carolina in a game they absolutely should have won at the end of last season. So I will note that they have lost this team, or what was a shell of this team in the past. You said it. They need to run the ball. They need to keep running the ball. David Montgomery leads the NFL in broken tackles with 12. He's been phenomenal. And just a great compliment to Gibbs, who is just a receiver and a running back all in one. Gibbs, that speaking of Gibbs, Lions are one bad route from Gibbs on that pick six from Goff in the Seattle game from being 5-0. So I think they're being 5-0 after this win this week. But yeah, I think the Lions are just rolling. I'm happy that they get to play a true bad team this week because they really haven't gotten to play a true bad team yet. Atlanta's really talented. The Seahawks are very talented. And we know going into Lambeau and going into Arrowhead is always tough. So I do got the Lions in this one pretty easily. I know the spread's like 9. I think they covered the spread. I think they win in a blowout. I just always also want to note that Penei Sewell has the third highest pass block rating right now, despite having to move from right tackle to left tackle for a couple games with the Taylor Decker injury. So I think that's awesome to see from him. You oftentimes see a guy struggle having to move from right to left. Shout out Evan Neal. You do not see that from Penei Sewell, and I got the Lions this week.
That's just what the really good tackles do. They can move from left to right, but hopefully he gets to move back and you guys get healthy.
He's back. As long as Taylor Decker's back, he's back. Yeah.
Oh,
Taylor Decker was back last week. Yeah.
All right, that's good. So, yeah, Detroit, they're just a better team at pretty much every single spot. I hope this is the game that Jahmyr Gibbs gets going, or at least gets a good, healthy dose of touches. It's not like the Panthers defense are going to be forcing them into like third and longs or anything, but I hope they give Jahmyr Gibbs some run and give him a chance to earn those reps, as I believe Brad Holmes said, that reps are earned and not given. But I don't know what's going on inside the locker room, but I got Detroit.
Yeah, I got Detroit as well. The Panthers just haven't looked good, and the Lions have looked good on both sides of the football. So I got the Lions.
Yep, I hope there's like there has been in the past when JMO has been on limited reps, a couple plays that are drawn up for him to go 50 yards and make a big play. I hope we see another one of those this week. But moving on to another one of our teams, Titans at Colts. Titans got a big win last week against a struggling Cincinnati team. They blew them out, but do not be fooled by the Titans. Titans are still not a good football team, and I am not leaving that point at all. The Titans will have to continue last week's great offense that they played against a struggling Cincinnati defense. I don't know if we see that this week. The Colts defense has been overperforming. The young secondary has been overperforming. The D-line, the first 3 weeks of the season was phenomenal. They struggled last week. I expect them to get back to their first 3-week stretch this week against a bad Titans O-line.
Yeah, the Colts are really one bad first quarter away from kind of just playing really well against the Rams last week, and they still barely lost in overtime. But Tennessee, they're just so different from the Rams. They don't have an answer at quarterback, even though they have 3 of them that they have invested draft capital in and just money in general. But we've said it week after week. If you want to take the Titans out of the game, just go up on them early. So then their best player's gone. It's the easiest solution. So if Anthony Richardson plays really well, which I believe he will, because Tennessee is not that great, it'll be quick work for Indy, in my opinion.
Yeah, this one's tough just because I think the game really depends on the injury report. If DeForest Buckner, he should play, but they need him to play almost every down in this game if the Colts want to win. Their run defense was struggled last week against Kyron Williams when he was off the field, and Taven Bryan was on the field. He had an abysmal game in run defense, so they need DeForest Buckner to play. Darius Leonard will continue to be on a snap count. They need him to show up and be the like 2020, 2019 Darius Leonard, good on run defense. One big loss for the Colts. They lost Dallas Flowers to the season with a torn Achilles. So Daryl Baker, who's been a healthy scratch after week 2, he really struggled against the Texans. He is going to have to step up and come back and play a little bit. So he's going to have a big game. Julius Brents has been solid ever since he played. And the big return for the Colts, Jonathan Taylor, we don't know if he's going to play this week, but he's scheduled to practice on Thursday. They have a walkthrough on Wednesday, so it's not an official practice. And then the Titans side of the ball, like you said, Zach, the key to winning for them is getting up early and getting Derrick Henry going. They had their statement victory. They usually have one of those a year. I'm glad that they got it out of the way week 4. I think it's going to be a close game. I really hope DeForest Buckner is ready to go and can play most of this game. And if he does, I think the Colts win.
Yep. I think the Colts secondary is going to play well. Like you said, they have to stop the run. They have to stop Derrick Henry. I'm not worried at all about the Colts offense. I think you build off that second half last week against a Rams defense that has been overperforming, and you take that against a Titans defense who you should be able to score on. So I think it really just comes down to, like you said, stopping the run. You stop Derrick Henry, you're going to win the game. Jim Irsay, let's open the damn roof and get to 3-2. I got the Colts.
Yeah, said it before. I got the Colts. They gotta go up early, take Derrick Henry out, and I'm very interested to see if Jonathan Taylor does play or even practice. So if he comes back, him and AR can be a scary backfield. I know we talked about it before the season, before he was even thrown on the pup list. It's just the possibilities are endless with those two. I really hope he plays, and I hope those two have a chance to figure things out, and the Colts and Taylor have a chance to figure things out, and they give him the money that he deserves because he truly is a top 5, maybe top 3 back in the league when he is at his best. But yeah, I got Indy.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking on the roof, if they didn't open it last week when it was like 70 degrees, nice,
I know.
beautiful weather, this week is supposed to be chilly. I think if we opened the roof last week, we win. But
That's what I'm saying. That's why I think they got to open it this week.
yeah, this game's on CBS. I think the Colts are 2-0 on CBS. They're 0-2 on Fox. So other than that, that doesn't matter. But I think Lucas Oil is going to be electric, especially if Jonathan Taylor plays. The Titans have won 5 straight against the Colts, but it's a new era. Shane Steichen, Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson continues what he did last week, has a great game. I'm picking the Colts win.
All right, moving on to Giants at Dolphins. The Giants, like we talked about earlier in this pod when we were talking about Monday Night Football, they are playing horrible, and they have the Dolphins and Bills the next 2 weeks. The Giants have a really bad O-line, and like I said in the opening, they invest draft capital and can't build an O-line for the better part of a decade now. The Dolphins get a get-right game after losing last game, tough divisional loss against a Bills team who's just a buzzsaw right now. I expect just a full get right from the Dolphins at home in a good weather situation is always good for the Dolphins.
Yeah, Dolphins, they're not much to say about this one. Dolphins have a clear advantage. Giants, they just have not looked good at all, and they're not healthy. If Saquon comes in, maybe they break double-digit points this week. But I did see that it's kind of funny. The Giants, I believe they're going on 10 months and some change without scoring a touchdown at MetLife. So that it was kind of funny to see, especially as a fan of a team who is on a 11 month and change streak of not winning a game. So it's nice to know that we're not completely alone. I'm not sure which one is sadder, probably the winless one, but it's a tough game for New York, especially coming off that really, really, really tough Monday night game on short rest. So I got Miami.
Yeah, the Giants, awful game last week. And the Dolphins offense, it was kind of quiet last week against the Bills, but like we've been talking about, their defense has been playing incredible. I expect their offense to make some plays this week. The Giants' only really chance is if they can get pressure on Tua, but even if they get pressure on Tua, they're going to need their offense to go to work, which it hasn't done. The Dolphins have already ruled out Teron Armstead, so that's big for them. It'll be interesting to see if Jalen Phillips plays. He was out last week. That could be good for the Giants, considering their pass blocking has just not been good. The Giants have just been awful. If they win this game, they might have a chance to salvage their season, but I don't see them getting a chance against this Dolphins team.
Yeah, I don't have much more to say about this game as a whole, to be honest. I see the Dolphins getting another blowout win. I see them getting back on track at home and moving to what would be, 4-1 now, for them. So I think they just have to keep winning those games. Obviously, you lose a big game to the Bills last week, which is going to be big for tiebreakers in the division, but I got the Dolphins easy.
Yeah, I said it before. I got the Dolphins, but I will say for all you fantasy fans out there, you got Tua, you got Tyreek, you got Jalen Waddle, you even got Raheem Mostert or the Dolphins defense for some reason. Start all of them. It's going to be I think it's going to be a really big bounce back day for the entire Dolphins team, especially after losing to a division rival last week. I got Miami.
Yeah, and you forgot Devon Achane.
Right.
So he's been incredible. He's already like top 5 in rushing yards or something, and he's really only had 2 full games to play. But I don't really see the Giants having a chance on offense or defense this game. I think the Dolphins are gonna. I don't think they'll score 70, but I think they might crack like high 30s. I got the Dolphins.
All right, moving on to the next one. Next game here, Texans at Falcons. This is two teams who I loved their free agencies and raved about them in the offseason. The Texans are really hot, and they're playing well on both sides of the ball, especially how they've been playing on defense. The Steelers have been struggling, and the Jags have been struggling on offense, but you have to give the Texans some credit for what they've been able to do on defense. Like we've said, they're a really well-coached team with DeMeco Ryans. The Texans are middle of the league in run defense, and they have to be good against this Falcons team to win this game, because that's how you beat the Falcons. You've got to force them to pass the ball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Desmond Ridder is definitely going to be the do or die of this Atlanta team. We know what Bijan can do. We even know what Algier can do. But Houston, on the other side of the ball, on their offense, CJ Stroud has been phenomenal for a rookie quarterback. He doesn't look like a rookie quarterback. He's using Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and all those other weapons that we kind of overlooked heading into the season, and he's making them look really good. Now, I do think Tank Dell is actually very solid himself, but I don't think anybody's calling Nico Collins a top tier wide receiver or anything, but he's producing like one. And it's all thanks to CJ Stroud. He's making great throws from the pocket, off platform, finding a new base and resetting himself and throwing it. He's fantastic. I'm thoroughly impressed with what he's done this year. I've said it before. I'll continue to say it. But Atlanta, this is a tough test. Josh, you have mainly been really high on them this entire season and part of the offseason as well. They did a lot of good things, especially with their front four. They're going to be seeing a lot of pressure up front, and I believe they just lost another old lineman to injury today. I don't remember exactly what the name was, but I think it was an interior offensive lineman. So that could mean a lot of work for that backup who has to go against Calais Campbell and Grady Jarrett. So that's definitely going to be a tough test for Houston for sure.
Yeah, I think it was what's his name? Keenan Green or something.
That sounds about right. I can double check it though.
I think it was him. But it is going to be in the Falcons are coming back from a disappointing game in London. They have to have a bounce back game, but the Texans, they've been hot. We didn't really expect this team to be possibly competing for a playoff spot, but the way they're playing, I could definitely see them competing for a playoff spot. DeMeco Ryans has been great, and I expect him to try to make Ridder as uncomfortable as possible. He's a great defensive coach, and Ridder under pressure can go into some turnovers. So that's something that they're going to have to do on the defensive side. We got CJ Stroud and Bijan Robinson facing off, two potential offensive rookie of the year candidates. So it's going to be a very interesting game. It's a tough one to pick because the Texans have looked great and the Falcons have looked great at times, but they didn't look great last week.
Yeah, I'm worried about the Texans a little bit this week. Like we've touched on, not just recently, this whole season they've had severe offensive line injuries and issues overall, and they're playing against a really good front in the Falcons this week. I am going to say I think this is the game where we see the first Stroud pick of the season. I think him being under pressure is going to have to force him to make some bad decisions, and I think we do see the first Stroud pick. But the Falcons just lost to a team in the Jags that the Texans blew out 2 weeks ago. The transitive property does not matter at all in the NFL. It never applies, but I think that's at least worth noting because both games just happened the past 2 weeks. With that being said, these were my two sleeper teams in the offseason going into this season. I've been back and forth all day today about which one I'm going to pick in this one. And I'm leaning, now that it's time to pick, I'm leaning Falcons, but I think this is going to be a close game. And I think I definitely see a world where the Texans can win this game, but I'm going Atlanta.
Personally, I didn't have too much trouble picking this game, and for the sole reason of the quarterback play. CJ Stroud has been way more consistent, and Desmond Ridder, yeah, he's looked solid at times, but you don't know which Ridder you're going to get on any given snap. So I went with Houston on this one just because I think Stroud's going to make a lot more wild plays and just be a lot more consistent, even with the O-line struggles. I think there will be a game coming up. It could be this one, but I don't think it will be, that the O-line inconsistencies and just injuries just catch up with the Texans, and then Stroud will pay for it. It's not his fault, but it's just what's going to happen. So I got Houston, and I think this is going to be a very sneaky, fantastic game for this week.
Yeah, I said last week I thought CJ Stroud would throw his first pick. Last week it didn't happen. I could see it happening this game, but I'm not going to make that claim again. I already made it once. I think this is going to be a close game. I think the Falcons are coming back from London. I think that could hurt them a little bit this week. So I am going to pick the Texans. I think CJ Stroud's been hot, and I think he continues it this week with great coaching from D'Amico Ryans.
You know, you could just say that every week is going to be the week he throws a pick, and then he's either going to be the best NFL quarterback to ever live, or you're going to be right eventually.
Yeah.
So
I'll just go every other week. Every other week.
There you go. There you go. All right. Moving on. Saints at Pats. This is two struggling quarterbacks and offenses just in general, with Derek Carr playing hurt for maybe ego reasons, who knows. And then Mac Jones getting benched for Bailey Zappi last game. So I personally think Derek Carr should not play. He looked really, really bad last week. We talked about Kamara getting 13 catches for 30 yards, just absurd stats, really, how many balls he caught behind the line of scrimmage. I think it's another injury notice. Not having Christian Gonzalez and Matt Judon for the Pats is huge. They're not going to have them for multiple weeks. I think that it's possible they both end up on IR. We don't know yet, though. So we'll see about that. This is just a game of two teams where this is another one, actually, that I think I could see going both ways.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with this one more than the Houston and Atlanta game, but honestly, the injuries to New England, I think it's going to be a little too much, especially because we have seen Christian Gonzalez go toe to toe with Tyreek Hill a little bit and play really well, especially against that high-powered Dolphins team. But against the Saints, and you're missing that guy who has potential to be Defensive Rookie of the Year. You're facing Chris Olave, now Kamara out of the backfield, and then Michael Thomas, who is still a solid receiver. You're missing a lot. And then if you're not going to be able to get to the quarterback as well without your best pass rusher and maybe a top 5 pass rusher in the league, depending on how you view Judon, it's certainly two huge losses for New England. Even though it is in Foxborough, I think New Orleans does have the upper hand here. But like you said, Josh, this really could go both ways depending on what version of Mac Jones and that Patriots offense we do see.
Yeah, those are my two main key points, was the Judon and Christian Gonzalez injuries. That really hurts this Patriots defense, which has been playing all right. And their offense just hasn't really been playing all right. So neither is the Saints, but Derek Carr has been banged up. So we've talked about it with the shoulder. I think if he played last week, I expect him to play this week. He just has to not turn the ball over this week and just manage his offense. Just no bad mistakes. And we've seen Mac Jones struggle last week. He's playing another solid defense. So this is the game I see going both ways out of every game this week. But I think the injuries might be too much for the Patriots to overcome.
Yeah, I want to see Jameis, man. I want to see Jameis. These are two teams that I think everyone could say are kind of just tough watches overall. I don't really want to watch the Saints. I don't really want to watch the Pats at this point. So at least we knocked those both out in one game here. Mac Jones, it'll be interesting to see how Mac Jones plays. Was really good to start the season, overperforming, and then the past 2 weeks he has not been good. Granted, Jets defense is really good. And who did they put this week? I'm blanking
Cowboys.
right now. There you go. So 2 good defenses. And he gets benched for Bailey Zappi last week. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds. I'm not going to question Bill Belichick, but I don't like benching your quarterback when he's as volatile as Mac Jones has been. But with that being said, the Pats play well at home. Bill Belichick's well at home. I think that's going to be the difference. I'm going with the home team here in the Pats.
I actually have New Orleans. Like you were saying, Mike, I think the injuries will be a little too much to try and overcome, regardless of home field advantage. And we saw it last year with Mac Jones getting benched. He got benched against the Bears after a poor start, and Zappi came in, provided a little bit of juice, but not enough, obviously. And they were already down by like 2 or 3 scores when he came in last week. So there really was no game-changing decision there. But Mac Jones, he's nothing special. I don't think he's going to be able to overcome the lack of talent around him and the lack of talent on the other side of the ball. Patriots, they're just going to be missing too many playmakers. It should be a not easy win for New Orleans, but I don't think they should have too much trouble with this one. So I got the Saints.
I don't think it'll be an easy win for either team. I'm going with the Saints, but it's just this does seem like a game that Bill Belichick just manages to coach his team to a victory, but I don't really see it happening. I got the Saints winning.
All right, moving on. NFC North matchup: Ravens at Steelers. The series.
AFC North.
This is not the only time I've done this either. I think I've called the AFC North the NFC North a few times on here, but
That's all good.
AFC North matchup. Ravens at Steelers. The series is 6-4 Steelers in the past 5 years, which I think is pretty interesting considering having Lamar Jackson on the Ravens for that time period. I would be pretty shocked to see Kenny Pickett playing next week. I heard he was week to week with his knee bone bruise, and they have a bye week in week 6, so I don't really see any reason to play Kenny Pickett this week. So with that being said, I will just go ahead and expect to see Mitch in this game. The Steelers offense has been really, really bad with their starting quarterback. Having Mitch in, say what you want about Mitch. He is one of the better backups probably, but either way, he's still a backup quarterback to Kenny Pickett. So I'm really worried about this Steelers offense, especially with playing a Ravens defense that completely shut down a backup quarterback last week.
Yeah, I was honestly going to talk about the Pittsburgh defense a little bit, going against a rookie quarterback, and they gave up 30 to him. And part of that was due to the offense really just not being able to move the ball at all. Like it was like pulling teeth seeing that offense try to move the ball down the field. Pickens, I saw a stat on Twitter that he was 0 for 8 on contested catches this year. And it really sucks to see because last year he was the phenom with the athletic catches, the one over the shoulder against Cleveland, and he had a couple really nasty sideline ones in the preseason too. He's an athletically gifted receiver, and it really sucks that he hasn't been used properly thanks to this horrific system and play calling. But missing their starting quarterback, doesn't matter who your starting quarterback is. You're definitely going to be taking a step backwards offensively just because of the reps and getting timing with your receivers. And Mitch, like you said, Josh, he is one of the better backups, but I don't think it's going to be enough to overcome this Baltimore defense who has played really well this year. And Lamar on the other side, he's really good. He's probably top 5 in a lot of people's MVP races. But if it were in Baltimore, I'd say it'd be an easy win for Baltimore. But it is in Pittsburgh. You never know what's going to happen once those terrible towels start swinging. So this one could be really close when it comes down to it.
I think this game will be close. It's a rivalry game. Ravens Steelers, one of the best rivalries in football. The Ravens defense did look great last week, but they were playing DTR and the Browns, Deshaun Watson. So you can't really make a big decision on that one. And like you said, Zach, the Steelers just didn't look good against the Texans. Their pass rush was just not there. TJ Watt didn't have a good game at all. So if they want a chance to win, they're going to have to bounce back this week, especially TJ Watt. He's going to have to put up a big game. I think the Steelers just have to be better in every aspect on offense and on defense. They need Matt Canada to magically become good at play calling, or Danny Football 77 on Twitter. I think that's where you can find his burner account. Matt Canada just has to be better in general if the Steelers want a chance in this game.
Danny Football. The Ravens have been playing really well on both sides of the ball. We saw last week Lamar, 2 passing, 2 rushing touchdowns. He was phenomenal against a really good defense in the Browns. He plays a really good defense in the Steelers this week. I don't really see a way the Ravens can lose this game besides what you said, Zach, them being on the road. All my betting people out there know that Mike Tomlin as a home underdog is an absolute tank and has been for his entire career. So I think that is of note that he is a home underdog and they tend to play well in those games. When he's a road favorite, it couldn't be more of the opposite like he was last week. But with that being said, I just think the Ravens are just going to be too much for a Steelers defense, Steelers offense that isn't playing well, and now is their backup quarterback in. So I'm going to go with Baltimore on the road.
Yeah, I got Baltimore as well. Being with your backup quarterback with very little time to prepare, it's always tough. And Pittsburgh, their defense wasn't really there last week. I think they do fight back a little bit this week, but I got Baltimore.
Yeah, I got Baltimore. Unless Matt Canada becomes good at play calling and Mitch Trubisky can play like that one game he did against Tampa Bay, I think the Ravens should win this game.
Maybe the most random game that gets the most mentions on this pod is that Mitch Trubisky Tampa Bay game.
Only because of last episode.
I think we brought it up. I think we brought it up before talking about the Bears, but as it tends to be. But moving on, Eagles at Rams. The Eagles are 4-0 despite a lot of media criticism about them not performing up to their expectations. And letting some teams hang in there. But with that being said, I think the media is really just disrespecting the Washington Commanders. I think the Commanders are just overall a good team, that their one bad week was against a Bills team who's playing maybe the best football in the league right now. So I think the Eagles' criticism needs to slow down a little bit from mainstream media. The Eagles' secondary, I will say, has not played well this year. Veteran unit, of course, but they have not played well at all. And Puka Nacua is just having one of the best starts to an NFL career ever, which is crazy to say from a 5th-round draft pick. But I think he's going to feast again this week.
Yeah, he definitely could, but has he gone up against a corner with the talent of Slay? I don't think he has yet.
Will he have to though?
Not against the Colts. Not a Woolen, I guess.
He's not Slay. I'm gonna be honest.
Woolen,
I think Slay.
Who else do the Rams play? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Jeez. I mean,
Niners don't really have a corner.
Their secondary is amazing. Weak spot, if you want to call it that.
Definitely weak spot. Yeah, and then I can't remember what else they played,
but I think Puka he's really good. He's going to get his numbers. I don't think he's going to like dominate, but I think Philly, they've just got a better roster. The Rams do have the best player in Aaron Donald, but we've also been underestimating the Rams kind of all season, and they've kind of proved us wrong a little bit. So this could be a really close game. I really don't. This is going to be a weird one because, like you said, Josh, Philly, they've been playing some tough teams, and they've looked like they haven't been at their full like potential yet. But who really knows what their full potential is? They're still trying to learn that offensive system. It's weird to say that already, like 4 games into the season. But when you go 2 or 3 years with the same coordinator, you get kind of comfortable within a system. And when you go to a new one, there are some hiccups, some bumps in the road. But their O-line, it's really good. And I think Swift bounces back from a really not a rough game, but he definitely got slowed down a lot by that really tough Washington front. So this will be a close one.
I don't know if Puka Nacua will have to go up against Darius Slay. I think there's a good chance he's supposed to practice this week, Cooper Kupp. He might play this week, so I can see Darius Slay and Cooper Kupp going against each other. But the big note for the Eagles is that they have to have their offense and defense simultaneously have a good game at the same time. It feels like every week so far the offense has a good game and the defense doesn't, or the defense doesn't and the offense does. I think that's the most important thing for the Eagles. Their offense looked great in the second half against the Commanders, and the Commanders' defense has looked solid all year. And now they get a chance against this Rams defense, which struggled in the second half against the Colts. But other than Aaron Donald, they're definitely weak in some positions. But the Eagles, they just have to be able to run the ball with DeAndre Swift and get the ball to their playmakers, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown.
Yeah, I think I was low on the Rams going into the season as everybody else was. And now I feel like the tide has kind of switched. They're sitting at 2-2. And people are starting to act like they're like this maybe like sneaky team that can go in there and compete with the Eagles. In my opinion, I don't think the Rams are competing in this game. I think it's going to be a Philly dominated crowd in LA. Philly travels well, and the Rams don't have fans. I think the Puka Nakua storyline and the Rams blowing out the Seahawks in Seattle week 1 is kind of blinding everybody from the fact that this roster has significant holes throughout. Matt Stafford has been good in spurts and overall been pretty solid. But if you watch the Rams games, he has had a lot of bad missed throws overall. And I think those mistakes are going to catch up to him at some point, as they have in his career, led the league in picks in his Super Bowl winning season. I got the Eagles here. The line is 4.5. I think that's kind of crazy. I think they will easily cover that.
I also got the Eagles. I think they have a better roster, but this game, me personally, I think it'll be a close one. I think if Cooper Kupp does return, he will have an immediate impact. And having your wide receiver 2 being Puka after the start that he has had, it really can't go understated. It's going to be huge. But I do have Philly in this one regardless.
I also have Philly. It'll be interesting to see if Aaron Donald could possibly lead to a stop on the tush push. I don't know if the Rams have the other threat to stop it, but Aaron Donald, best defensive player maybe ever. Could he stop the tush push? I don't know, but I got the Eagles winning this game.
Got a true unstoppable force versus a movable object in that one.
Yeah.
But moving on, Bengals at Cardinals. This Bengals offense has been utterly horrible. 11.5 points per game through 4 games is just horrendous from them for a team with so much talent on the offensive end. Bengals defense was excuse me. Bengals defense was really bad last week versus the Titans. Their offense didn't do them any favors, but overall, if you watch that game, you know that the Cincinnati defense did not play well. They gave up a lot of big plays to a underwhelming offense in the Titans. And the Cardinals have been the exact opposite. They've overperformed on both sides of the ball. Josh Dobbs has been pretty good. By no stretch has he been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And their defense has been shockingly pretty good all year long.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. Cincinnati severely underperforming while Arizona is severely overperforming based on their preseason expectations. And I don't know what boat to really jump on for this one with Cincinnati. Is it their system that's really kind of failing them now after a couple of years under Zach Taylor? Or is Joe Burrow really just that hurt that it's affecting him? He's really starting to kind of regress into a one-read quarterback. Maybe it's just out of fear of getting hit and getting dangerously hurt. I'm not really sure. But if you watch the games and watch his eyes, he looks a little panicked. He doesn't look like himself, and I hope he snaps out of it at some point, whether it is the injury or just an unfortunate mindset being in a 1-3 hole right now. But if there's ever a statement game for Arizona, this could definitely be it. Yeah, they beat the Cowboys, but let's follow up on that. Let's see them take out a potential Super Bowl contender going into the season and continue building that resume and making your draft pick worse and helping Chicago a little bit, because Chicago needs all the help they can get right now.
If there's any game this year that's been like a must-win game, I say that. I feel like I say this, but the Bengals absolutely have to win this game if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. I think if they lose this game, their division hopes are probably dead, considering this might be the worst team they play. I don't know their schedule, but we've seen teams come back from 1-4 before, but this division is very good, and I don't think they could come back in the division. And they really haven't given us any sign of returning. If they do, they need to keep finding ways to get Jamar Chase involved. They need to develop a downfield threat. T. Higgins is now out. They haven't been able to go downfield at all, whether that's the offensive line struggles or just Joe Burrow being hurt. I don't know, but the Bengals have to find a way to figure it out, and they have to figure it out fast.
You know, I thought last week was the must win for the Bengals, and I don't know that the Cardinals are a worse team than the Titans, to be completely honest with you. I'm worried about the Bengals. I'm really worried about the Bengals. The Cardinals defense has been sneaky good and could give that. I'm sorry about the noise. There's some jackass is revving his car up in the parking lot out there. But Cardinals defense has been sneaky good this year. I think they could give Joe Burrow and this offense problems. T. Higgins might play through a broken rib. So shout out him for that. Always respect toughing it out, but we'll see if he misses this game. I think this could be a big game for Dobbs. Like I said, the Bengals defense struggled last week against the Titans offense. That's pretty piss poor overall. So I could see this being a really good game for Dobbs and the Cardinals offense overall. I think in Arizona, I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals over the Bengals. I couldn't imagine this preseason, but at this point, I think the Cardinals are just a better and dare I say better coached football team than the Bengals right now. I don't know. I'm going with Arizona though.
I it feels so weird to go with Arizona. Like you have your reasons. I completely respect them, whatever. For me, I don't think I can. I just love the talent that the Bengals have, especially up front on defense with Trey Hendrickson, DJ Reader, who's severely underrated and not talked about enough, by the way. He is phenomenal. But if Joe Burrow can ever find a game, it's definitely this one. But that should have been last week and maybe the week before. Like, at what point do the Bengals just pull the plug on the season? Like, I feel like they've got to be in that panic mode where they're just DEFCON 9. It's shit's really hitting the fan right now. And I think this is going to be one of those games where it's going to be super ugly, but the Bengals just barely crawl out with a win.
Their schedule hasn't been that difficult yet either. It's going to get worse.
Right.
It's going to get worse.
It's so unfortunate with the way they started. They needed a strong start, especially with the AFC North getting better. So, and it's Burrow getting hurt really screwed all that up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just hoping on any hope that the Bengals find a way to figure it out, whether it's Joe Burrow getting healthy, offensive line getting better. But I do agree with what you said, Josh. I think this Cardinals team might be a better coach team than the Bengals at this point. Zach Taylor's led the Bengals to a Super Bowl in a year that no one thought they would. But this Cardinals team they've been coming out hot, fiery. They've been making explosive plays. But I'm just holding on to the hope that the Bengals will figure it out, that Joe Burrow will figure it out, and Joe Mixon. I have to pick the Bengals, but it wouldn't shock me if the Cardinals win. And this could be the Bengals season if they lose. Not could be. I think this will be the Bengals season if they lose. But I got the Bengals winning it, hopefully.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some opportunities for you guys to catch up to me this week. I feel like I've been on the wrong side of a lot of these here, but or maybe the right side, who knows? But moving on to the Nathaniel Hackett Bowl, Jets at Broncos.
Game of the week.
Yeah, there was a lot of
game
shit.
Of the week.
There was a lot of preseason shit talk, and let's watch some of these worst teams in the NFL go at it. I'm excited for it. Zach Wilson's coming off his best game ever. Shout out Rodney Harrison. He doesn't. Maybe he is special. I don't know. That was wild. What do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I just think it was kind of out of pocket. Just out of pocket.
Shout out Chris Jones though.
It was so funny.
Shout out Chris Jones being respectful and just not being an asshole like Rodney Harrison.
Right. Yeah, that was I don't know. Maybe seeing the Giants uniforms and thinking about that David Tyree helmet catch. Maybe. Or no, I guess he was the Jets game. For some reason, I was thinking about last night Monday Night Football, but yeah, maybe he's still salty about that. But
at least he apologized. I guess he did give him a nice apology. That's what Robert Saleh said.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that. Well, good for him. He kind of had to after that. That was crazy.
It was something, but
yeah,
got a good laugh out of me.
Yeah, Jets defense has been pretty consistently great, and they're facing a pretty mid offense in the Broncos, who played good last week, but we know what defense they played last week. So, I expect Zach Wilson to have another good game if this O-line can block for him. And the Broncos pass rush has not been phenomenal. So if this O-line can pull something out of their ass and block for Zach Wilson, I think he could have another good game. And for his confidence, stacking good games is going to be huge for this team.
If there's ever been a game for Zach Wilson on the Jets in a year that he wasn't really supposed to play to get like something going, it's this one. You let Justin Fields, a guy who's been called a running back, a sorry excuse for a quarterback, whatever. You let him go for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns on you. You best believe the guy who was drafted second overall in that same draft, you better hope that he doesn't do the same. It's really sad. But Zach Wilson, this is definitely a game for him to get something going, for sure. This Denver defense, they have not been able to rush the passer extremely well. They haven't been able to stop the pass extremely well. It's definitely kind of a match made in heaven right now for Zach Wilson. I'm going to sound like a broken record. he could build off of what he did last week. He played really well against the defending champs. Yeah, maybe Mahomes wasn't playing the best and kind of kept them in the game with those 2 interceptions, but Zach Wilson, he played really well. He could build off of this, and this is the game to do it. Denver on offense, on the other hand, they might have a tough time moving the ball compared to last week because they're facing a vastly more superior or vastly superior. I don't know.
Superior.
Vastly superior. Okay, English major for what? So they're playing a way better defense this week. So it'll be interesting to see how Sean Payton builds on his first win back in the head coaching seat. So this will be a fun one.
Yeah, Zach Wilson, like you guys both said, he looked a lot better last week, and they get the revenge game for Nathaniel Hackett, their offensive coordinator. He has the chance to go against this defense that struggled, like you guys said. This is a big game for Zach Wilson. He did not lose them the game. He took responsibility. Maybe he showed maturity by doing it, but maybe that's just because he actually had a good game and he knew it. But it's a big game. I think this team might rally around Zach Wilson. They seem to rally around him late game. Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb were giving him support. He was able to find his best receiver, Garrett Wilson, a lot. He had a good game. I think he should continue to go to Garrett Wilson, and I think he will. But on the Broncos side of the ball, Russell Wilson has kind of quietly been a lot better this year. He's looked good under Sean Payton. The defense has definitely taken a step back. They struggled against every team they played. They're second worst in passing yards. They've given up 1,142. A bulk of that was against the Dolphins, but still second in passing yards. They have a chance to kind of get their season back on track with the win here and go to 2-3, but I think it's going to be a close game.
Yep, I think being at home is huge for the Broncos. We're must-win merchants on this pod, but I think this is a must-win for the Broncos for sure. Sean Payton, you go out there in the offseason, you talk your shit about Nathaniel Hackett. You're sitting at 1-3 right now. You cannot lose to the guy you talk shit to, and end up 1-4 to start your career with the Broncos and lose once again at home. So I think that would be really tough for the Broncos to lose that. But on the other hand, I think you have, all jokes aside, I think the Rodney Harrison thing is something to rally around in the locker room for the Jets. I think between the Rodney Harrison thing and Sean Payton talking shit about Nathaniel Hackett preseason, I think the Jets are going to be amped out there. That's going, if I know Robert Saleh like I feel like I do, I think that will be 100% talked about in the locker room. I think these boys will be ready to go. And I got the Jets going into Denver and getting revenge for Sean Payton's preseason comments.
I think this is a must-win game for both teams, honestly, because the Jets, you come off a really strong team performance against the reigning champs, and your quarterback who started off the year really poorly, he had a really good game, so you've got a chance to really build his confidence, and a win here would 100% do that. But for Denver, you got to build off the win you just got last week. You got to show that you can put up points against a not so bad defense as well. Like you said, Mike, Russell Wilson has looked a lot better this year compared to last year under Sean Payton, but I don't think it'll be enough. I like the Jets roster a little bit more than the Broncos roster. I got the Jets.
Yep, it's surprising. We all have the Jets. I have the Jets as well. I don't want to be on the wrong side of this Zach Wilson game. I think he might have finally figured at least something out. I hope for Jets fans' sake. I just hope he becomes a quarterback. Maybe he will never become the quarterback he was expected to be with the second overall pick, but just become a solid quarterback in the NFL. And I hope he gets his career back on track in this game.
All right. Moving on to the next game here. Oops, I lost my notes and they're still not showing up. That's great. Moving on to the next game here. Chiefs at Vikings. The Chiefs struggled last week against the team we just talked about in the Jets, but I think old Patty Mahomes comes out mad this game, and I think we could see a vintage Mahomes performance against a Vikings defense. Yeah. A Vikings defense that might get more hate than they deserve. They actually have looked good in a few games this year. But KC is top half of the league in takeaways, and the Vikings are number 1 in turnovers with 11. So I think that is just a really tough matchup for the Vikings, and I think this is going to be a struggle for them to win despite being at home.
Yeah, Chiefs, they're coming off a really rough offensive performance against the Jets, who are a really good defense. In Minnesota, they're not a good defense. They got a couple solid pass rushers with Danielle Hunter, but outside of that, they have a weaker secondary, and that's what Mahomes really feasts on. So I don't really have much else to say about this game. I think Mahomes is just going to dominate this one. Kelsey, he's going to take over the middle of the field. He's going to do his crazy run after catch. It's going to be Mahomes and Kelsey. Whether Taylor's at the game, who knows? But the Chiefs are 2-0 as Swifties, and I expect them to go to 3-0 after this week.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if she decides to go to Minnesota. But
That's gonna be the true test of the relationship.
That's Lizzo territory right there.
We get a pair of Netflix quarterback stars going head to head in Kirk Cousins and Patrick Mahomes. Interesting stat here. How old is Patrick Mahomes? Like 26 or 27?
27 or 28, I thought.
Oh, well, he has a chance in this game to get a win against his 31st different NFL team, which would be every team except for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think he gets it done. This Vikings defense has struggled, and he struggled last week. It's going to be very interesting to see. The Vikings have to play clean ball if they want a chance in this game, especially with Kirk Cousins' turnovers last week. They cannot have those turnovers that they had. Kirk Cousins does lead the NFL with 19 passes of 20 or more yards, and 14 of them are to Justin Jefferson. So it'll be interesting to see if the Chiefs can do anything to stop Justin Jefferson's hot start to the season.
Yep. I'm just going to reiterate the Vikings turnover struggles have been there as we see they're number one in the league, and the KC defense has been pretty good to start the season, despite giving up a lot of points to Zach Wilson last week. But the Vikings barely beat a really bad Panthers team last week, which I think says a lot about this team more than it says anything about the Panthers. I expect the Vikings to turn the ball over. I think they're going to struggle to score. And when you do that, you don't beat Patrick Mahomes. So I got the Chiefs.
I mean, I also got the Chiefs. I think I said it before. I think the Mahomes and Kelsey duo, they're really just going to dominate the entire time. Minnesota, they're having that slump after winning 11 straight one-score games last year. And I don't know exactly what their record is this year. I think they might be 1-3 because they won last week.
Yeah, they won by 8 last week. So yeah, I guess
technically one score. So I just don't think they have the talent to stop Mahomes and the Chiefs. Plus, L'Jarius Sneed this year has been following wide receiver ones around. He followed around DJ Moore in week 3. He was following around Garrett Wilson last week. So I expect him to follow Justin Jefferson and do his best to kind of just play damage control, because no one's really going to stop Jefferson for an entire game, except maybe Darius Slay, but he's not on the Chiefs. So I got the Chiefs for this one.
Yeah, Kirk's been off to a hot start this year. He's completing passes at a 69% rate, 1,200 yards, 11-4 touchdown interception ratio. But this Chiefs defense has been very solid, and they've had trouble with turnovers. They're going to have to be very clean with the ball. They're going to have to just find a way to win, kind of like they did last year in Buffalo. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think the Chiefs are going to win this game.
All right, moving on to the next game here. Next game here, possibly the game of the year. Two of the best teams in the NFL right now. Cowboys at 49ers, Sunday Night Football. I could not be more excited for this game than I am. The Cowboys bounced back on offense last week. Like we've talked about, they really did struggle the first 3 weeks despite winning big in a lot of those games. But they play a top defense this week in the Niners that it's never easy to score on them. The Cowboys defense is going to have to play amazing, as they have all season, against Purdy and these Niners weapons to keep them in the game. And I just think this has all the makings of a classic.
It 100% does, but I think this is going to be the first game that the Cowboys are really going to feel missing Trayvon Diggs. With the amount of weapons that the 49ers have, you need as much talent as you can have to counteract that. And not having arguably a top 5 corner in the league who is a certified ball hawk, it really sucks. So San Francisco, it's going to be a tough game for both teams because both defenses are top tier, and both quarterbacks, they've been inconsistent, honestly, in terms of getting the ball to their weapons. Dak, you've mentioned it before, Josh. Dak and the Cowboys offense hasn't scored enough when given the ideal field position. Luckily, they've been able to win a lot of games because their defense has been holding teams to 3 points multiple times. But on the other hand, San Francisco, their offense, there's just too many weapons for opposing defenses to stop. But the Cowboys, I think, have the best chance to do that. But like I said before, Diggs not being here is really going to hurt them. But this is easily game of the week, maybe game of the year.
It's definitely game of the season so far, and I think this is probably Purdy's toughest regular season game so far. He's played 9 games. He has 9 wins in the regular season. It's going to be interesting to see if this Dallas defense can shut down the Kyle Shanahan-led offense. They've been elite all year. Uh, Purdy is first in passer rating, and he's first in touchdown interception ratio percentage. It's early, but it's what you want to see. Trent Williams versus Micah Parsons is something to possibly watch. I don't even know if they'll want to match up Micah Parsons on Trent Williams, but they might have to in some situations. So it'll be very interesting to see those two possibly go head to head. And the 49ers rush defense has been the best in the league so far. That's really what the Cowboys want to do, run the ball with Tony Pollard and sometimes Deuce Vaughn, but that's really what they do. Yeah, the Niners defense has allowed only 68 rushing attempts so far through 4 games, 3.9 yards per carry, which is solid, and 264 yards rushing through 4 games. So the Cowboys' offensive strength is kind of going to be wiped out a little bit. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Dak can do anything on this defense, if he can limit the turnovers, which he struggled with these last couple of years. That's going to be the key to the game, limiting the turnovers for Dak.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Mike. I think the biggest talking point here is the 49ers run defense versus the Cowboys run game. The Cowboys, despite having who we've been told is a good quarterback in Dak and who we've been told is good weapons for the Cowboys receiving wise, they have been a running team and they've been going as far as they can, leaning on the run. They're not going to be able to do that this game. This is going to be a game where, and we said it earlier about the Niners secondary being their weakest point, where Dak and this offense have to move the ball down the field and pass the ball well. If the Niners can score versus this defense, even semi as well as they've been playing on offense, I think they're going to win the game. I think this could end up being a big defensive battle, and whatever team can make the key drive, I think's going to win the game. And Shanahan, we look at the tail of the tape here. Shanahan's going to outcoach Mike McCarthy. Let's be real here. He's going to outcoach Mike McCarthy. We can just say that now. So, like I said, I think it's going to be a defensive battle. Whichever team that can make that key drive is going to win. And I have more confidence in Brock Purdy and the Niners offense that they can make that big drive from what I've seen so far. I'm going to go with the Niners at home, and which should be a phenomenal game.
We saw what could technically be maybe a preview of this game last year in the playoffs. It was Cowboys at Niners in the divisional round, and the Niners won 19-12 in what felt like a really ugly game. Dak turned the ball over a couple times. Purdy, he kept the ball safe. He was reliable. He relied on his run game, where Christian McCaffrey actually was not the leading rusher. He only had 10 carries for 35 yards in that game, but he had a touchdown. So he'll probably get that one this week as well. But this is going to be, it's going to come down to coaching. Like you said, Josh, I think Shanahan is just head and shoulders above McCarthy. And I do think the Cowboys defensively are going to be missing Trayvon Diggs immensely this game. So I got San Francisco.
Yeah, I mentioned the 49ers rush defense, but the rush offense is just as good. Christian McCaffrey's been great. They're averaging 4.6 yards per carry running the ball, and they have 9 rushing touchdowns through 4 games. So they can run the ball very well, and they can defend the run very well. It's going to be a very good game, no doubt about it. I can see it being sloppy where both defenses kind of dominate, but I trust Brock Purdy to control the ball and not throw the interception, where I can't say that about Dak Prescott. And so because of that possible short yardage positions for the 49ers, I think the 49ers are going to win this game at home.
Yeah, I just forgot to touch on, I know you said, Mike, about Micah Parsons and Trent Williams. I would assume the Cowboys avoid that matchup as much as they possibly can. But we'll see. Hopefully this is a game that maybe we see again in the season. Who knows? Moving on to a game that I can say we will not see again this season, Packers at Raiders. The Packers D-line has played really well, and the Raiders O-line gave up 7 sacks last week to the Chargers, 6 to Khalil Mack. So I think that's a really good matchup for the Packers overall. Jordan Love gets a healthier Watson and a healthier Aaron Jones this week after getting the mini bye after coming back from their injuries last week in week 4. And I think the offense should have a good bounce back game. They showed life in the second half against the Lions. The Lions were playing soft, though, and letting them take all the checkdowns and everything they needed in the short field as they were playing with a massive lead, and you have to. That's what Eric Glenn loves to do. But So we saw a lot of success from them in the second half. I think they take that success. I think they build on it. I think they're going to just have a really overall great game on both ends of the field this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a chance for Jordan Love to kind of bounce back after a rough game against the Lions on Thursday night. He's got a little bit of extra rest, a little bit extra time to prepare. Christian Watson gets some more reps with the first team as he's coming back from that hamstring injury, which is, I think it was a hamstring injury, but that's definitely not something you want to play around with. So it wouldn't shock me if they still limit him a little bit because Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed, we talked about it before, this young Packers receiving core, if they can probably shoulder the load for one more game against what feels to be a weaker Raiders secondary that Jordan Love can maybe take advantage of if he wants to be consistent. I'm personally not too high on him. You've heard me talk about it millions of times, but Green Bay, I think, just has the better roster. This is the Devontae Adams revenge game, despite there not being any Aaron Rodgers on the other side to kind of just dap up at the end of it, despite a win or a loss. But I think the game being in Vegas will have a little bit of a sway on it. I think Green Bay does have a better roster, but Vegas, those fans are nuts. I'm going to be honest. So we don't know what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, the Raiders just have not looked great so far this year. Their offensive line hasn't been able to block for the run, which was their biggest strength last year. Josh Jacobs struggled weeks 1 through 3, but he was able to get back on track last week, mostly in the passing game. But I expect him to just keep grinding away and getting better. I really just don't really trust Josh McDaniels to lead this team to victory. He struggles to find ways to win. He would rather find ways to lose. And I feel like Matt LaFleur likes to find ways to win. Both teams' run defense has struggled so far this year, and same with the run offense. But the Packers have been missing Jones. They got him back. He was banged up last week, so I expect that to change with Aaron Jones being healthy. And yeah, I just don't trust Josh McDaniels really.
Yep. It could be AOC, it could be Jimmy G, but I'm not really sure that matters in this game. AOC did lose his first career start, but I think you have to take into consideration the fact that he was sacked 7 times last week. It's hard to win a game when you're sacked 7 times or even really get a chance to look good. The Raiders will have to give their QB time in the pocket, whoever it is between the two, or this game will be over pretty quickly. The Packers have been known just in general over the past decade to stomp on a lot of teams and get ahead early. I see that happening this game. I'm going to go with Green Bay winning on the road in prime time. And yeah, I just don't think the Raiders are a very good football team right now, and there's just too many question marks.
Yeah, you really could not have said it better. Raiders, they don't have a lot of answers for all the issues they have. And the Packers, they just have a really good defense and some solid weapons on offense, regardless of Bakhtiari playing or not, which he won't be. He's on IR, I believe. But I got Green Bay in this one. I think Jordan Love really just bounces back from that rough one that he had last week. And Green Bay's got a lot more rest because they played on Thursday night. Vegas played on Sunday afternoon last week. So both teams are getting they're getting more rest than the average team because it's Monday night. But going from Thursday to the next Monday, that's a lot of rest and definitely something to take into account for a Packers team that has not been the healthiest this year. So I got Green Bay.
Yeah, Jordan Love's managed to not look great this year, but he's managed to not look bad. I expect him to kind of stay in that same category, like green area. Packers fans, they tend to travel very well, and we've seen opposing fans go into Vegas well because of first time being in Vegas and it being Vegas. So I think this crowd's going to be a little more Green Bay than you think, and I think the Packers are going to find a way to win.
All right, so that about does it for our Week 5 preview of the NFL. We're going to finish this pod off as we always do with our previews with a few gambling picks for you guys.
Before we get to that, there are 4 buys this week. There's Cleveland Browns, Los Angeles Chargers, Seattle Seahawks, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I'm personally looking really deep into the Chargers. With Eckler being iffy the last few weeks, he's definitely got a chance to get healthy. And for my fantasy team, I'm really hoping, I just traded for him. I'm really hoping he comes back healthy.
Yep, Mike Evans as well. Hamstring last week, now gets a week to recover. So a lot of teams using that extra bye week to get guys right as they should. Really quickly.
And Deshaun Watson.
Yep.
Yeah. We don't have to worry about Chargers
and Geno Smith.
Either, thank goodness.
And Geno Smith, yeah. So a lot of these teams all need
some luckily timed buys.
Yep. And I will just flash the picks graphic on the screen real quickly, so you can pause the video here to look at that. overall, and you can see our standings on the screen as well. But all right, moving on to the betting picks for this week. I have Eagles -4.5. I have, outside of last week, overall, I've had a really good season betting on games. I'm not sure I've been more confident in a pick than this Eagles -4.5 here. They have been covering every week outside of last week, and I think this 4.5 line is way too low in LA for them. And then Jets money line. I think the only reason that the Jets are not favored in this game, the only reason the Jets are not favored in this game is because it's in Denver. Otherwise, they would be favored. And yeah, I like Jets money line plus 120 or something like that. They're 1.5 point dogs.
For me, I've got Bears and Commanders. I'm hitting the over on 44.5 every single game the Bears have been in. They have surpassed the over, and not because their offense is really good. It's because their defense is really bad, and I don't expect that to really change this week. So I'm hitting that, and then I got Dolphins -11. The Giants. I don't think they're a good team, and I think the Dolphins are going to come back with some fire in their eyes, and maybe in their gut too, depending on if you're a Cardinals fan. But I think they come out. Tua is going to be throwing the rock to Waddle, Mostert, Tyreek Hill especially. So I got Bears Commanders over 44.5, and then Dolphins -11 for mine.
And I'm even seeing 10.5 here for the Dolphins. So a little extra juice for you on that one.
Right.
Yeah, it's week 5. I don't know if I've yet to hit a bet yet. It's been a very rough go for me, but I feel better this week. My first bet, I got Buffalo Bills -5.5. I think they're going to go into London, and I think they're going to win the game. And I think their defenses look great, like I said, and I think they're going to get the job done and win by possibly double digits. And then my second one, I have Texans money line versus the Falcons. I said I think the Texans are going to win. I think CJ Stroud will go into Atlanta and get the job done. He's looked great this year. The Falcons are just coming back from London, so I think that's going to have some effect on the game. Maybe not a great one, but I think it will have a slight impact. So I got Texans money line.
All right. So that does it for episode 13 here. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get a notification every time a new video drops, and follow all the social medias in the description and in the channel description, as always. So we will see everybody. We'll be recording Sunday night during Sunday Night Football, as always, and the next episode will be Monday. So we'll see everybody in the next one.